welcome to our weekend retreat. At this beautiful sacred place. Our theme for this weekend is stillness. Which is inseparable from who you are in the depth of your being. One could say everybody is still already. The stillness is already there. It does not need to be found, even. Certainly does not need to be created. Because it's already there. The only thing is, you may not notice it. If there's a lot of mental noise, then you just don't notice it, that it's there. And also you don't notice a dimension within yourself that is far deeper than the movement of thought. And your whole identity is then bound up with the movement of thought. A mind-created sense of self. A personal history and no more. That is soon coming to an end. Soon, next year or in 40, 50 years' time, it's soon. So who you are and stillness are one and the same. And if you have not yet gone completely mad in this mad world, that means you have some access to the stillness inside you. You may not remember it afterwards because it's not memorable, since stillness is timeless and the mind cannot memorize it or think, oh, that was interesting, I'll remember that, because stillness is not interesting. Interesting is a mental thing. Just as our weekend here is not going to be interesting. You may have noticed that already. But interesting is not the ultimate. It's only the ultimate to the human mind. You can go out here and look at a tree or flower or the sunset. And could you say, this sunset is interesting? Only if you were trying to write a PhD about sunsets. If you had to analyze it, or the oak tree becomes interesting the moment you start to analyze it mentally. And there is a place for that also in this dimension. But if you get caught up on that dimension only, where you break things up into little bits and pieces and analyze them, and by the way, most kinds of analysis, you have to kill the thing first before you can analyze it, or in the process of analysis it gets killed. But if you just be with the oak tree, contemplate it, truly look, then what you're looking at goes beyond interesting, is far deeper than interesting. The same as the sunset. There's nothing interesting about it, and yet it is awe-inspiring. It is deep. There's a depth there that defies analysis by the mind. And the moment you analyze it, you have reduced it to something lifeless. And most people in our civilization, and this has been going on for a long time, are trapped in that dimension where compulsively they go about their life analyzing, interpreting, and labeling things as soon as they enter their field of consciousness. They do it to people, they do it to situations that they encounter, immediately have some personal reactive relationship to it. They do it to nature, and they can no longer perceive the sacredness that is there in nature, because they approach it only through thinking. And that is a dreadful prison that you then end up in, the prison of your own mind. And then you approach your whole life only through that. And your whole life becomes reduced to a conceptual reality in the head, consisting of thoughts that you have about things, viewpoints, opinions, and even so-called knowledge. Knowledge is thought, a label, and gives the illusion that you know. And all it is, it's a thought that you have put on something. And then it loses its depth and aliveness. And you begin to relate to reality through the veil of thinking. And you relate to yourself through the veil of thinking, because you yourself become a conceptual, thought-based, egoic self, a me, with its unfulfilled personal history, its desires and fears and frustrations and its hopes that it will find ultimate fulfillment of its unfulfilled and unfulfilling sense of self based on a story in the future, which again is the thought form. That's what the future is. Nobody has ever encountered it except as a thought. And yet most people live unconsciously as if the next moment or the one after that were more important than this moment, the only thing there ever is. This one moment that you could never escape from, have never escaped from, will never escape from, that is inseparable from the life that you are, also inseparable from stillness, because the moment you enter the now with your attention, a stillness arises. The essence of the present moment, no matter how mad it may appear on the surface, is always stillness. It is also sacredness. The only place where the sacred dimension can be found is now. You have to be present to this moment. You have to wake up into this moment to realize that life is sacred. When you are lost in thought, sacred is meaningless. It could become another of the many concepts that you can play with. And you could write a PhD about it without ever having encountered it yourself. So this, the depth of now, is inseparable from your very being, your very life, and it is the sacred one life. And yes, this is why we're here, to deepen our awareness of that dimension. And the sacred is everywhere. If you become truly present, you would find the sacredness everywhere. It's easier here. In certain places that are called sacred, there is less of a density in the structures, the physical structures, the forms. There is a transparency almost to the forms. Something shines through the forms. And this is why we call those places sacred. But even here, there are some people who cannot sense that because they are not present enough when they walk in the garden. They are still in their head thinking about where they are going the day after tomorrow and the accumulation of problems which are thought forms that are part of their sense of self. I have important problems to think about. And occasionally you get a glimpse, 3 seconds of presence, and you get a glimpse, oh, and immediately there comes the movement of thought again. So some people cannot be present here. Most of you can, and those who cannot, I believe, will quickly deepen and see how easy it is to be present and how hard it is not to be present. Normally people tell me the opposite. They say it's so hard to be present. And this is what the mind believes. But the opposite is true. Not being present to the now is hard. To live trapped in your mind is hard. That makes living into something that is a struggle and an effort, and you never get there, you never make it, because you live for the future, which is only a thought form. And this is another aspect of living trapped in thought, with your whole sense of self trapped in thought, hoping that at some point you will find yourself, complete yourself, or it's all going to work out in the end. And in the way the mind imagines it, it cannot work out, because every form dies, and every structure eventually dissolves again. And the mind only thinks in terms of forms and structures, and it hopes that life will work itself out on that level of structures and forms. And it's always disappointed because it cannot. And the miracle is, it's already working out at this very moment. It's already as it should be at this moment. You have already arrived at the place of sacredness at this moment. It's easier to see it here, to sense that here. More difficult to feel that this moment is sacred when you find yourself at Piccadilly Circus or Times Square. And you need to be an enlightened being, perhaps, which simply means very present, to see the sacredness in the flashing Coca-Cola sign at Piccadilly Circus. And you need to be a Buddha to see the sacredness in a prison camp. And if one says the prison camp also has the dimension of the sacred, if one says that prematurely, this will be misunderstood and really will not make sense unless you know within yourself that that which is beyond form, the one formless life, is indestructible. And some people who were in prison camps realized it for themselves. So we are here to find that dimension that is deeper than thought within ourselves, that has nothing to do with time. And so people ask sometimes, how do I still my mind? I want to find the stillness. And then, yes, there are some good meditation methods. And eventually that also has to be left behind, otherwise it comes in between who you are. You put a method there to find yourself. That is a space between you and yourself. And every method eventually needs to be left behind. You don't need it, it's the last thing you leave behind. And this particular teaching works without methods. But if you have a method, it's beautiful, and you use it until you don't need it anymore. Every thought in your mind, when you're not aware of it as a thought, has a sense of self in it. A sense of I am. You identify with the movement of thought. And that is the essence of unconscious living. And that is why people continuously live for the future. The thought form of future where they are hoping to complete their insufficient sense of self. The happy ending of my story. This is not to say you should not pursue certain activities, learn new things, explore new countries, meet new people, learn this and that, acquire knowledge, expertise here and there, develop your abilities, physical or mental, and create whatever you are called upon to create in this world. It is beautiful to create in this world. And on that level, of course, there is always more that you could do. And as you grow older, there are certain things that you can no longer do. So gradually, on the level of form, your life becomes reduced. There are already many, many things that it is unlikely that I will be able to do. I'm not going to win the title at Wimbledon anymore. It would be a miracle if I managed to do that. Not totally impossible, but I'm not even going to try it. And many other things would say, well, it's too late. And this is true. It's for many things, it's too late. On the level of form, I need to accept, yes, no, I'm not going to be the heavyweight boxing champion. It's just too late for that, or it never was possible. So on the level of form, yes, depending on where you are in years, there may still be many things that you can add to what you can do and what you know and what you explore. Or it may be that you're reaching the end of the lifespan of this form, so there's little time left and there isn't that much more that you can add to yourself. And that's fine too. Now the question is, are you looking for yourself when you attempt to add more to who you are? And that is the dilemma of human existence. There is a compulsive searching for more. Not that there's anything wrong with doing new things. No. But there is a compulsive striving towards the next moment and the next, hoping to add more to who I think I am. Thought forms, possessions, attainments, recognition by other people, all thought forms. I have not enough yet, I don't feel secure enough, I only have 5 houses and 3 cars, and I still don't feel secure. And I think the houses are not big enough. That must be the reason. Or they write about me in the papers and then, okay, I'm not, by the way, I don't have 5 houses, it's just an example. Or to get recognition they all write about me, and then I read in the papers, and finally people have recognized who I am. They think I'm great. And that temporarily gives you the feeling of I have now added that universal recognition to who I think I am. And many people strive for that. They think, when are they going to discover me? When are they going to realize that I am special? They may never realize it. There is a search for specialness in the mind-made sense of self that in some cases is fulfilled and in most cases is not fulfilled. on the level where it's seeking. And so in either case, that sense of specialness, you could say, there are two ways of being unhappy: not getting what you want and getting what you want. Because all the people who have attained universal recognition in whatever field, they are not happy either. They are not at peace with themselves. They do not feel the sense of security and the sense of finally having arrived that before they had it, they had associated with that idea. Once people recognize me, then I will have arrived. And then the moment comes, and at first it feels good, and then you see that people's opinion of you are only thought forms. They are images that they create, or if they are very well known, the media creates a fiction that has your name. And then you read about yourself in the paper and you see, who is this? They're writing about, there's nothing to do with me at all. And so many people become unhappy, even more unhappy when they attain recognition. The world tells them, yes, you are special, and yet I don't feel special. Or they see this is an illusion, that's not me, it's an image, a mind-created image. And a few people then go beyond all the mind-created sense of identity because they have attained what the world tells us is desirable: wealth, property, recognition, attainment here or there, and yet it has not provided them with what they were really looking for. Myself, a sense of being rooted in life, the fullness of life, as Jesus calls it, the fullness of life. And so there are many famous people who take drugs, and they need to dull the dreadful unhappiness they feel inside, because even the illusion of more in the future that most people are still living by doesn't work anymore. Because if you already have everything, the illusion that the more, by attaining more in the future, you're going to be happy, doesn't work anymore for you. What a dreadful fate. You can't look to the more anymore to feel that you are yourself. And so they feel even more unhappy. They cannot escape into the next moment anymore. So they need to take some drugs so that for a little while I feel better. And then, or a few break through to a deeper level within themselves. And realize that that sense of specialness that operated on the level of better than or more than was an illusion. You can pursue it and it will take you nowhere. It can never fulfill itself because it is a thought form, me, the special one, that you wanted to incorporate into the story of me. That is the basis of your identity as long as you are trapped only in thought. Me, the special one. Some people have the fiction in their head that they are, and I don't want to take, by the way, away anybody's fiction if they still like it. You could have the fiction in their head that in a past lifetime you were Napoleon. And that can give you a sense of specialness, but it is derived from the movement of thought and images. But that keeps some people going. Nobody might agree with you that you were Napoleon, but at least it temporarily keeps you, okay, but you have to keep thinking about it and tell the story to others. And others have other stories where other people say, yeah, that's true, that's who you are. But it is based on the movement of thought and the emotions that go with those thoughts. So you have a whole identity based on a personal history. Very little. And it's not going to last for very long. The soap bubble of my personal history is going to pop soon. And everybody can say, I'm not predicting my imminent death, nobody knows. But everybody's death is ultimately imminent, because 1 year or 50 years, it comes quite soon. And it'll be now when it comes, not tomorrow. And so to be trapped in that sense of self, a conceptual reality, that is a dreadful fate. It's constant neediness, which even gets translated into the spiritual. Once you have realized, okay, I'm done with possessions, I know that that's not it. But be careful here with other thought forms that arise to replace. For example, you might have spent 20 years of your life making money, and then you see, okay, I'm now giving away my BMW, I'm going to buy a bicycle because I'm spiritual. And I will only wear certain spiritual clothes or this or that, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm on my bicycle, and then I can be on my bicycle and look at the person who is still so unconscious that he's driving his BMW and can think how much superior I am in my spiritual. And of course what you're carrying now is a much heavier thought form than the BMW thought form. So your sense of self has become, it's quite possible that the BMW man has less of a sense of self than the man on the bicycle. It's possible, probably not, but it's possible. So be careful with how the mind shifts and then chooses another story to feel, but always to make itself feel more than in one way or another, so that it works through comparison, because it's thought. I have an image of who I am, and then I need to compare that to who I think other people are. So I impose images on myself, mental concepts, and impose them on others, and then I compare my image with that image. Okay, so I'm more spiritual than this. Or he's more spiritual, he's been at it for much longer than me. And then you go, how much you know. Knowledge is another one. You casually mention from your great store of knowledge, you casually mention a few things, and the other person is dumbfounded, doesn't know what you... And it's obvious that you know more than he. And that gives a feeling of, And so it works with little things to enhance its always very precarious sense of self. And then it loves being right. It loves others to be wrong, because it's the only way you can be right. It loves being right and feels itself enhanced momentarily through, I'm right. So it's always the strengthening of the fiction of self, the fiction of me and my story. And that people go through life looking for that. That's the purpose of their life, is to strengthen the fiction of me. And so that becomes the motivating force behind their actions, what they do. And it's always it's an uneasy thing, because very often you feel less than somebody else. And then you have to kind of work around that. Less special than he. He knows more, but on the other hand, I look better. And then other people, if they cannot achieve the specialness in the way in which the world tells us you ought to be special, they achieve a reverse specialness by feeling unfairly treated by life, by feeling that they are a victim of certain people or situations, and in their thought form of being a victim, they feel very special. So you can still win, even if you lose. The mind is very clever. And a victim identity can be very strongly lodged in some people's minds. And as soon as you meet them, and after 5 minutes, they will tell you their story. You know what happened to 25 years ago it happened. And of course, yes, dreadful things did happen 25 years ago, and they happen today also in this mad world. But building an identity around some form of suffering that happened at some point or repeatedly in this mad world where suffering is inevitable, to build a sense of specialness around that, then you have put yourself into a dreadful prison with bars all around. But at least you think you know who you are. You have a story. Oh, great, at least I have a story. My life treated me more unfairly than most people. I can feel more then. And so whatever the mind, it will find something to give itself an identity, a conceptual identity, and it is very much afraid of losing the story, of abandoning it, stepping beyond it. And usually the story needs to become unpleasant for people to be pushed out of it. It's because in a way the story is a dream. The dream of who I am. And if a dream becomes very unpleasant, then you will want to wake up. If no dream of me is ultimately all that pleasant, but some are more unpleasant than others. So see how the self, the conceptual self, continuously tries to survive, not only to survive and protect itself from others, and to use others to enhance itself, use them in one way or another. And that determines the relationship between humans. When you haven't stepped beyond that, there is wanting to use another human or feeling you need to protect yourself from another human being. Those are the two things that govern relationships in the egoic state. You either use them or you fear them. You need them and you're afraid of them, and sometimes both at the same time. And of course that also means there is no true relationship. It gets distorted because you don't know who you are. You have only an image in the head that tries to make itself stronger because it doesn't feel enough yet. I'm not enough yet. And so for some people the sense of specialness is attained by frequent complaining in the head and out aloud about life and situations and people and what's going on, and it really shouldn't be happening. They should do something about it. It's all very bad indeed. Why doesn't he? And there's blaming, continuously complaining and blaming, and that the ego loves because it makes itself right by doing that. When you complain about something or somebody, you feel you are right and the person or the situation you complain about is wrong. I'm not saying complain in a practical sense where you say, I'd like to exchange this thing that I bought because it's not working. That's fine. It's practical and you do something about it. And But the complaining, that is the telling of stories in the head that has no practical purpose whatsoever, that constantly is in a conflict relationship with the present moment. There's always something about it that isn't right, and so you complain. Or something has just happened and you complain, or you complain because it hasn't happened yet. So many people feel they cannot be themselves or truly at peace with themselves because of something that happened or something that hasn't happened. Those are the two reasons why you cannot be yourself. Either something has happened and that's preventing me from being myself truly, or something hasn't happened yet. And if that doesn't happen, I can't be myself. Isn't that it's a strange thing? I need something to happen so that I can be myself. So we are not, all the many ways we are talking about this here so that you can recognize it when it happens in you, because it is a universal pattern in every human. It's inherited. It is the collective human mind in its egoic, unconscious state that operates in that way, that keeps you trapped on the surface of your being, on the little surface movement, the wave movement of life, the forms of life, all the things that happen, and you're trapped in that on the level of form, and of course on the level of form, which includes even thought forms, they are primordial forms. When you are identified with every thought that comes into your head, and of course there's never an end to it, because the next thought comes immediately afterwards. It's a string. And so it goes the whole day long. It go. And occasionally you get the little glimpses that keep you sane, so that you can still survive here. They keep you from committing suicide, or they keep you from going totally insane. You have little moments of. And they may be short, but they keep you alive. There is a little bit of joy seeping through from the depths of your being, through the layers, the heavy layers of mind. There's a little crack appears here and there. If it didn't, you would be totally lost in here, and you certainly wouldn't be sitting here. And so occasionally there's moments, it may be when there's sudden beauty, and it's overwhelming, or a moment of danger that wakes you up out of the continuous voice in the head. Oh. And suddenly there's more intense aliveness, beingness, presence. And then thought comes back. Or it could be, for some people, danger in the form of physical illness can come, and suddenly that wakes you up. Oh. And suddenly you realize all the things that you pursued and you thought were important are not important at all. So already something collapses on the level of thought, all the things that mattered so much, and suddenly you develop a physical illness and see it doesn't matter at all. And so that can be helpful for some. It can be an awakening for some people. Or it may be some people are kept sane by an animal, because whenever it's the only way they can relate to another being that is non-conceptual, because when they meet humans they are trapped in the concepts that they have about every human they meet. They impose mental concepts and images in the form of what they think about. They know exactly what they think about you. They're not relating to you, they're relating to the thoughts in their head they have about you. And most people do it to each other. So you have only two thought-made entities trying to be in a relationship. Each one both needing and fearing the other. And this is, of course, why relationships are so problematic these days. So some people are kept sane by an animal, and that the pets fulfill an incredible function that hasn't been fully acknowledged and recognized in this world. They keep humanity sane. Because there you have, when you touch the dog or the cat, whatever it is, and for a moment you're not some people even there they carry ego, but those are the extreme cases. You touch the animal and you can be yourself. You don't need to psychologically protect yourself from the animal or want something from, you just can be with that, and you can, something transmits itself because the animal lives more deeply connected with the source of life than most humans. Less removed, or one could say the illusion has not grown to such an extent of being a separate entity, a me, and the rest of the universe. The animal still has the oneness with the totality, hasn't lost it totally, is deeply rooted in being. So the animal does not create a world of problems. The animal is one with life. And humans have separated themselves from life. They have a conceptual image. This is me, and there's the rest of the world. There's a barrier. And there's the other human being. A dreadful concept, other. And then needing others and fearing others, walking through life there. And other is another concept. So the egoic self, the stronger you are trapped in the egoic sense of self, the more you will emphasize the otherness of others. And others will all have become reduced to walking caricatures, because the few labels that you have about them, then you reduce them. And they're basically all caricatures. And sometimes when you listen to people, they mention about somebody they met or somebody they know and see how stupid that person is, and they have a few judgments. And when you listen to that, you see this caricature of this strange, distorted human being. And when you meet them, you say, this is the person you were talking about? Yeah. And so the animal is not burdened by the continuous stream of thinking. It does not have a conceptual identity like the humans. So it hasn't separated itself. So it can be an access point for some humans into being, where they can be with a being without, and it is, for some humans, it's the moment when they actually, thought subsides, when they pat their dog, or you have a purring cat on your chest. Suddenly you think, thought quietens, becomes more quiet, and you have a space of stillness. And you feel the purring of a cat on your chest. Or simply to watch an animal can be, if you can truly watch, it can take you out of your mind and you become present, because the animal is present. And the same with the realm of nature, the trees and the flowers and the blades of grass. They are all present. They are all surrendered to life, one with life, a beautiful temporary expression of the one life. And so, for some humans, that's their only access point, and for some, even that doesn't work anymore. I knew someone with a very strong ego who had ego battles with her cat. If the cat didn't come, she had the kitchen window open, and the cat one evening didn't appear, and she was, where's my cat? And then she would shut the window and said, if she doesn't want to see me, I don't want to see her. And so the poor cat had to stay outside all night. That also happens, so there are cases where humans cannot even relate to animals anymore. So this is where and so we see millions and millions of humans living in a pseudo-reality, with a sense of self that is ultimately a fiction, that is always insufficient, always feeling a sense of lack, always needing more, always even needing to make enemies so that it can still define itself as me and the other, needing some kind of conflict so that its separate sense of self can remain intact. What can I be in conflict with today? What can I complain about now so that I can feel a little bit more myself? Ah, there it is. And so when millions of humans live like that, then the result is what we read as human history, a dreadful tale of incredible suffering that humans inflict on each other and other life forms on the planet. Incredible suffering. And so the same you see on television tonight. When you switch on the news, you will see just how mad the collective consciousness is of humanity in its present evolutionary stage. And yet, here we are. Here we are, and we recognize that all that is a form of, one could say, collective mental illness that humanity is suffering from. And so one could say, well, how can God allow a whole species to become mentally ill? I heard that question somewhere in somebody's mind. And of course you can ask the same question on a personal level. Does God allow me to be ill? How dare he, she, it, to allow me to be ill, to suffer? And of course, within the larger whole, everything has its place, and everything is as it should, including your personal illness for the moment. Doesn't mean healing cannot happen. But there are many humans here who were brought here, who would not be here if they had not suffered some kind of dysfunction in their lives. Physical illness perhaps, or some great loss. And so you can already see on your personal level that your suffering, your physical suffering, whatever it may be, to some extent began to dissolve the egoic structures in your mind. It started to shake it loose so that something else could come through. And you suddenly found yourself becoming interested in the present moment. And then you end up here. And no matter what your story is, and some of you may feel that it was all one big mistake, the story of me was all one big mistake. You are here now. And that's an amazing thing to be here now and see that was the story. And the outcome of all that big mistake was that now you're stepping out of it and you realize it as, yes, on the level of form, this is how my life unfolded. And now let me speak personally for one moment. I could easily look upon my whole life, let's say until the world told me that I was important a few years ago, it happened. Before that, nobody told me I was important. Until that, I could look at my whole life up to that point as one complete disaster. Nothing actually worked out. I tried that for a few years, and then I was at university, and then I did my PhD, and then I gave that up, and then I drifted for 2 years, and then I went into that, and then I tried that, and it didn't, many things, okay, and then my mother said, okay, now you're 45, what have you achieved? Others have already built up big businesses. And so on the level of story, it was a big disaster. And yet, fortunately, at some point already, I had given up identification with the story. That the story was only my identity up to the age of 29, and it was a very unhappy one, even there. Even when that was my relatively successful. The only worldly success I had was I did well at university up to before I became a graduate student. And it made me happy for 2 weeks. And so, isn't it strange that a failed story can produce the flower of consciousness? And perhaps the flower of consciousness needs the mud out of which it grows. You have the beautiful image of the lotus in Buddhism, the symbol of Buddhism. The lotus flower, it has its roots in the mud, and it grows out of that. And there's nothing more beautiful in human life than a failed story. And the good news is, every story ultimately fails because the story is based on the forms, it identifies with forms, and no forms last for that long. No building lasts for that long. Eventually it crumbles. All forms are temporary and they are beautiful. The essence that is hiding in each form is the formless one life. That is indestructible. But even this beautiful form, Finchon, it is not eternal as a form, but the eternal shines through the forms here. That is why, because the forms are transparent, and you also are not eternal as this form, and yet a transparency is happening in you even as you sit here, so that that which is beyond form, no matter what we call it, stillness, presence, beingness, a deep sense of I am, that before got mixed up with a story of me, and that the preciousness of being is your true specialness. What the egoic self had been looking for on the level of the story, I want to be special, that very thought obscured the fact that you already could not be more special than you are now, but not special in the egoic sense that more than he or more than she. Special in the sense that there is a beauty and preciousness that is the essence of your being, and that is what deep down you can sense. Even the person who is most completely identified with their story and their conceptual sense of self, they feel that there's something precious that is me, but they confuse it with the forms, thought forms. It gets that essence of being, which is formless and timeless, gets mixed up with form, with thought, and a story in the head. And that is what the Buddha calls the fictitious self, the self that the Buddha, even 2,600 years ago, recognized as an illusion, an enormous insight, the greatest, perhaps the greatest insight of all humanity, when he recognized the self is an illusion. And by that he means the self that is identified with any form, thought form, physical form, anything. And that is the illusion, to lose oneself in some form. And then the preciousness of being, that is the essence, that is timeless and formless, in every human and in every life form, one could say, incarnates in form. And there's nothing wrong with incarnating in form as long as you know yourself as that which is beyond form. But if you lose yourself in the incarnation, and ultimately you had to do that too, that was part of the totality of how things work. To lose oneself is, as the Buddha called it, suffering. Then you suffer because you don't know who you are anymore. You're looking for yourself in some form, in some thought form, in some physical form that you identify with, which is then also a thought form. Me. And so everybody is looking for the essence of their being, not knowing that the specialness that they look for is already the essence of who they are. But they can only find it when they stop looking for themselves in the future, through more. So the one place, it's all like some strange game. The one place where you truly can only find yourself in that one place most humans never look, which is the present moment. They look there for themselves. And to feel, I want to be more. On the level of form, you can temporarily be more, that's true. And then that dissolves again. But there is a level within yourself where more does not operate. You do not need to be more. You are already a full expression of the one life. You are already complete on the level of the timeless, the essence of your being. Now, the only reason why you needed time was you needed to be ready to hear this truth and recognize it as a truth. For that, one could say, you need time to hear the message that to be who you are, you don't need time. But the paradox is, there are still many humans to whom this would be meaningless, and they don't come here. They need, in other words, they need more time. They need to continue to look for themselves, and they need to continue to be frustrated in their search. That is part of the larger design. The frustration is built into human existence. And so that's what the world is for, the so-called world. It is there to frustrate you. And to drive you deeper, to eventually drive you out of identification with form. Because as long as you're identified with form, it is so frustrating. And you can never make it. You can never arrange the forms and accumulate all the forms that you need, you think you need to be yourself. Or sometimes you can do it for a very brief time span. You can suddenly find everything is now working in my life. My health is good, my relationship is great, great money, got possessions, everybody loves me. They all write good things about me. It's all working. My job, my living situation, my finances, my health, my relationships, they're all great. But before long, something there starts to crumble here or there. It's either the finances, or it's the relationship, or it's the living situation. So it's in the nature of the world of form that nothing stays fixed for very long. And so it starts to crumble again here. You just had sorted it all out. And so that's why humans, they experience life as a series of frustrations. So why can't it work? And so it doesn't work because they are looking for themselves there. They are demanding that the world of form should make them complete and happy. I demand that this world should complete who I am, should give me my sense of self. I just need this and that from there, and then that's all. This is what I demand. And then it's not happening. There's something wrong here. Life isn't working. It seems to be working for everybody else, but it's not working for me. I read in the magazines, all these glossy people, it seems to be working for them. But only if you look at the glossy pictures. If you visited them at home, you would see that it's not working for them either. So it's built into living here is frustration. It's meant to be frustrating. This is the whole. There is a purpose, but people haven't seen it. So it's quite a relief to recognize, first of all, the world cannot make me happy. To demand that situations, people, places, or attainments should complete me or make me happy are bound to be frustrated, whether I attain or do not attain. Okay, so that looks very negative, doesn't it? And that's why when you don't go deeper, when you only see the surface, you see, oh, all is vanity, as the Old Testament prophet said. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I've seen it all. I can't remember the exact words, but I'm giving you a free translation. I've seen it all, I've done it all, and it's all completely meaningless. That's what he said. And that was probably an elderly man who had tried it all. And now, why did they put this into the Bible? Isn't it very negative to have such a statement that life is completely vain, whatever you can achieve is vanity? They put that in there because when you see the truth of it, you're already becoming free of it. The seeing of the inability of the world to make you happy, the seeing of the short-lived nature of whatever forms you encounter in your life, what is it in you that is able to see that and say, ah, or even laugh? What before was a dreadful story and frustration, you suddenly step out of your own story and see that your own frustrating story is not your personal dilemma, but the human condition. And you derived your sense of self from that, which is nothing personal whatsoever. It's the human condition. And that it's the human condition in its unconscious state, its unenlightened state. And that's what gave you your sense of personal selfhood, and that you wanted to cling to. And now you step out of it by simply seeing it. The seeing means something is arising that is not part of that unconsciousness. And that is why they put it into the Bible, because when you see it, that which can witness that in you, the impermanent nature of all forms, the fictitious nature of the mind-made story, what is it in you that is able to look at that and see, that is not thought, that is the ability to be aware and hold up the mirror of awareness and simply see it there. Or let's say better, the light of awareness shines on it. The light of awareness shines on it and sees what before you were trapped in, the frustrating story of my life. And there's no life that's not ultimately frustrating. It only begins, it loses its frustration when you do not look to the world anymore for your satisfaction or for yourself. When you give up demanding that people, places, situations should make you happy and give you, fulfill you, you don't demand it anymore, then suddenly the ability arises to allow the forms of this moment to be as they are. Because life at this moment already, always is as it is. It always, the isness you cannot doubt. Whatever forms appear in the present moment, it always is as it is. And so most humans are in a conflict relationship with the isness of life. They internally run away from it or reject it, criticize it, complain about it, or look somewhere else. I don't want the isness of this, I want that. So when you see what the world cannot do for you, you no longer, you drop your demand because you see it as absurd to demand something of the world that it cannot deliver. And then you can simply be with whatever is, and this moment are always inseparable, of course. Whatever is at this moment is as it is. I don't demand that this place, even if you come here and you demand that Finton should make me happy. If you came with that demand, you would probably already have experienced frustration here. Because no place is capable of doing that for long. Or doing it at all. And so you come here and say the little things, oh, that shouldn't be here. There's a Royal Air Force base right next to the spiritual center. It doesn't make sense. And so you can complain about that. That shouldn't be. Why did they put that here? They should have gone somewhere else. And then you can say, I came here to find peace, and what do I find? I find screaming jets, I'm going home. And that's only one thing. And you'll find many more. My roommate snores. I can't get a night. I have to wait for the bathroom. And it's not sunny. This is late May and it's not sunny. I should never have come to Scotland. It's not. So if you, just little examples of if you expect a place to fulfill you, it can't do that. In no place, even if you went to a South Pacific island, there would be something that is not quite right. It doesn't fit there. Whatever it is. The sunshine every day, it's too much. The mosquitoes at night, I didn't know about that. They didn't mention them in the travel brochures. So here again, a beautiful opportunity to drop the demand that a particular place should make you happy, or give you peace, or help you find yourself, and simply then bring a yes to whatever form this moment takes. Instead of demanding that the form of this moment should be different in order to satisfy me. So you bring an inner alignment into your relationship with the present moment. Let's put it like that. The way in which you relate to life, which is always now, only now, an inner alignment comes in with now. So you do not internally separate yourself from now, which is life. Life and now are one. Because that is a source of great frustration and suffering. And so, whatever form this moment takes, there's a jet flying, it may be raining, and then there's some sun coming through. Good, bad, the mind could call this good, could call this bad, but it all is as it is at this moment. And an enormous freedom comes into your life when you drop the demand that this should be other than it is. And then you no longer demand that Finton should make you happy or give you peace. And then every moment, or rather the one moment, is as it is. You go one step at a time to wherever you go, and you look around, and you stand, and you walk, and you sit, and there are people coming, people going, things here, things there. And suddenly, as you bring an inner alignment to the now, something arises within you that has nothing to do with the form that this moment takes. And it arises because you allow the form that this moment takes to be as it is. So in allowing the form that this moment takes, internally embracing it, saying, I might as well say yes, because it is life. Because it is the only moment there ever is, the now. I might as well embrace it and say, yes, that's how it is. This does not diminish your ability to change if anything needs changing. Action arises out of the alignment with what is. So you can be aligned with getting something that is not good. You can have food that's gone cold or something, and then you bring it back to the kitchen and you say, this food is cold, would you please heat it up again if it's possible? Nothing wrong with that. But it's the action comes out of alignment. The same action could arise out of an inner resistance to what is, and then there's immediately self comes in, a complaining self, a self that enhances itself through its complaints, and then walks the same action but with a fundamentally different energy field. You then walk with that plate to the kitchen and say, what is this? Don't you know? Don't you heat your food here? What you should be serving hot. You are in this. Your action is to enhance yourself through it, to make the self right, to strengthen the fiction of me, and then you do that to another human, and that other human is going to defend itself and try to react in order to resist the diminishment of their sense of self, because that's what the ego tends to do. It says you are wrong. It tries to diminish the fiction of that other person, and then the other will defend itself and come up with even bigger cannons and start shouting back at you in order to defend its diminishment of, again, the diminishment of the fiction. What a world. So you could live, when you live in alignment with what is, intelligence arises in your life that is far greater than the accumulated knowledge of the mind or the ability of the mind to analyze or solve IQ problems or crossword puzzles. That's a very tiny form of intelligence. Nothing wrong with it, but it's tiny. But that's what this world calls intelligence. You can memorize and analyze and be quick in giving answers, manipulate thoughts, and keep as many thoughts as possible in your head. And yet there's a far deeper intelligence that our civilization knows nothing of. And it's that out of which all true creation comes, true creativity comes. And so that is accessed when you bring a yes, no more than that, a yes to the present moment. That, by the way, includes the past, because there are some people who carry a strong grievance or resentment connected with something that happened in the past. Somebody did it to you, or a situation happened in the past. There's still a strong grievance that they carry. And how does that work when I say accepting the present moment? Accepting the present moment, the way it is now, includes accepting the past, because it is only because you believe that something that happened in the past is interfering somehow with your ability to be alive or to be yourself or to be fully yourself at this moment. You're saying, okay, maybe you lost a limb or something like that. Somebody cut it off 10 years ago. And you carry the grievance. So how does, when you accept this moment as it is, you accept this as it is? One limb is missing. That is as it is. That is the form that this moment takes. Well, and you accept that this is how it is. Then you don't have the reference to the past anymore as having caused that, and on the level of form, of course, that is a disability. It prevents you from winning Wimbledon this year. You can't do it anymore. Yes, on the level of form, perhaps that imposed some limitation on your life. But the world is full of limitations that are inherent in form. If it's not one set of limitations, you will encounter some other set of limitations. So there's almost never a present moment that does not have certain limitations. Even the noise coming occasionally from the Air Force base next door could be considered a kind of limitation. Or even if you can't get a good night's sleep because your roommate snores, could be considered as a relatively minor limitation in your life. But there are large limitations, and they're also to do with the world of form, and that's what the world of form does. You can exchange limitations, you can of course improve your life on the level of form, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not looking for yourself in it. It's beautiful to play with forms in your life. Okay, I'm going to make money now, I'll play with that. But not hoping that once you've made enough, then you can finally be someone. If you're not someone now, being, you cannot find it through money or through future. Then you can play with the world of form, and the miraculous thing is, when you drop your demands towards the world of form, that it should make you happy, then wherever you find yourself, whatever situation you find yourself in, whoever you meet, wherever you go, place, situation, person, is actually quite satisfying, because you have touched something within yourself that is deeper than the movement of thought, which is form, deeper than form. The movement of thought is still form. So the simple thing of internally bringing a yes to this moment, is that all? Yes, but it needs, for you to do that, requires a certain degree of presence to be able to say, this is as it is, instead of being taken over by an old reactive pattern, governed by the fictitious self that says, this doesn't fit into the story of me, or how can I fit this into this isn't completing my story, in fact this shouldn't be in my story at all, get out of here. So many people, they were walking stories. Often when they meet other humans, they don't want to be with other humans, say, get out of my story, you shouldn't be in here. I want somebody else in here. And again, so you step beyond, you step out of the movement of thought, and the stillness and the peace arises the moment you become friendly with what is. That's all, to become friendly with what is, no matter what form this is takes. It's going to change anyway, quite soon. And people who are stuck for years are usually stuck because there is a resistance pattern inside them that keeps them stuck in the same situation. And the resistance pattern says, I want to get out of this dreadful place that I'm in. And every day they go to the office and they say, this is... And the same energy is there, the negativity and the resistance, and every time they answer the phone, then, yes! And so you get some people, traditionally it's people at government offices who carry a lot of frustration. I don't know if that's still true, probably is. They're everywhere these days. And so you people are continuously, and they say, oh, why am I stuck in this boring job with all these dreadful people? They always want something from me. And so 25 years later, they're still stuck and complaining. And then they hear the message, it is possible to live differently. It is possible to say yes, not say yes to a story, not say yes to, okay, I might as well accept that I've spent 25 years in this dreadful office and I'm probably going to spend another 10 years in this dreadful office. I might as well say yes to that because I read that in a book somewhere. No. This has nothing to do. This has nothing to do with bringing a yes to some kind of story about your life. Or if you were in prison, to say, okay, I might as well accept that everything has failed in my life, and I've been in here for 20 years, and I've got to do another 15 years, and I might as well accept that I've been a miserable failure. Nothing. Saying yes to the present moment only means the present moment, not a story. It means it takes you out of the story. And that is vital in your spiritual life now, as a spiritual practice, as often as possible, to break the continuity between past and future. Okay, I'm coming from there and I'm going there, I'm just busy trying to get there and getting this done. I'm on my way there, don't stop me now. And break, okay, but what about this moment? Where are you at this moment? This moment? Oh. And suddenly you wake up out of that stream of past future that was pulled you from past to future. Always, that is old conditioning, same old thing, same old thing. No matter how much you complain, the more you're stuck. And suddenly you take the present moment out of the story, and you wake up and suddenly alertness comes. For example, you might hear the bird singing. Oh. And you realize it's beautiful. And you feel yourself breathing. And you feel an aliveness in the body. Every cell is alive with the life that you are, that which animates the body. And as you feel that aliveness, you're also aware that there's a stillness around you. And in that stillness there's this incredibly beautiful sound that this little being produces, which is a celebration of life every moment. You've stepped out of the story into the aliveness of the present moment. And yet, you can still deal with things. You may still be walking wherever you have to go. And when you arrive there, you're there and confront another human being. You can still be present. So there's more and more presence rather than time. It's reversing, whereas before you were dominated by time. Now you use time still, but allow presence in, which means break the story as often as you can. Step out into the aliveness of this moment, and then a far greater intelligence comes in, and love and joy, all the things that otherwise you can only think about but never experience. All those suddenly come in and transform even the story. Not that the story is ever going to be continuously wonderful in the level of form. Forms always come and go. But because you are not dependent anymore on the forms of your life, the circumstances of your life, you have accessed the life that is beyond form, that is you. The stillness, the aliveness, the I am, that is deeper than I am this or I am that. And then all the beauty and aliveness and joy that is there in the moment, even if the forms were crumbling, it can be there. You would be missing the whole thing because you would be drifting continuously adrift in the mind only. And the bird, you would not even hear it. Or hear it from, oh, that's pretty. And then, okay, my problems. What are my problems? Whenever you think you have problems, a good question is, what is the problem now? Well, I'm trying to see my lawyer about this thing, and there's a bank, I'm going bankrupt, and I'm seeing my lawyer about, what is the problem now? There's no problem. I'm sitting here, breathing. Beautiful bird song. Stillness, space. There's an aliveness that I feel inside. Every cell is alive. There isn't really a problem now. But there may be one tomorrow. And of course, when tomorrow comes, you have to ask the same question. What is the problem now? As you sit in front of the lawyer, says, sign here to declare your bankruptcy. You say, okay, what is the problem now? Here's a piece of paper, and here's a pen scratching on a piece of paper. And then you put it down, and you listen to the bird, and see the tree and the flower, and feel the aliveness within, and say, I'm still alive. So you don't need the idea, I am a bankrupt person, to give you your sense of self anymore. Because your sense of self, it comes from the life that you are, the aliveness of your very being, and then, yes, on the level of form, it happens that I had to declare bankruptcy. I'm still breathing, and the bird is still singing. And 1 million people before me have survived that. And this is just one example. A more extreme example. A friend of mine, Byron Katie, spiritual teacher, was visiting a woman in hospital who had advanced cancer, and she came into her room, hospital room, and the woman was, of course, very unhappy. And Byron Katie said to her, "I don't see a problem." And the woman got even more unhappy. And she said, "You don't see a problem? I'll show you a problem." And she took off her blanket and showed her right leg was 2 or 3 times the size of her left leg. "This is a problem." And Byron Katie said, "Oh, so your problem is that you think your right leg should be the same size as your left leg." And in that moment, the woman laughed for the first time in a long time. She laughed because she dissociated from the thought form. She stepped out of thought which judged this form as wrong, which judged the present moment as wrong, should not be. She was trapped in the thought form, this should not be, invested with a sense of self. And so the stepping out is vital for you. The story has a momentum that will reassert itself again and again, because that is the momentum of the mind. And I'm not saying that you no longer deal with things in your daily life. You deal with them much more effectively when you have access to the deeper dimension where true intelligence resides. That can then flow even into the way in which you deal with things on the level of form. So even on the level of your story, the story will unfold more harmoniously when you no longer demand that it should make you happy or do anything for you. Then you can truly honor this level of form, because the neediness is gone, because you're not looking to it anymore to give you a sense of who you are, because who you are comes out of the aliveness and depths of this moment. And so to step out of the story and into this moment as much as you can is vital. Always, okay, just a second, where's the now? Especially when you get upset, you lose yourself in some thought movement. Or you can help others if you have an agreement with your partner or friend, and when you can see that they are losing themselves in thought, which almost certainly is going to be a world of problems. It's not that they are solving problems by thinking, they're creating problems by thinking. To solve, the true solutions always come when you, for a moment, you step out of thinking and become truly intelligent by becoming still and present and alive. And then, if thought should come back, often a little later you suddenly have a creative insight that before wasn't there. It came because that dimension operated in your life. And then it comes more and more. And then everything changes. Your relationships change because you don't demand that the other person should do something for me, enhance my sense of self. You don't compare yourself to others and try to be more than another to strengthen your sense of self. It's fine to allow everyone to be as they are. And you don't need to change them to say, you should behave differently and then I'll be happy. If you behave differently, you will make me happy. But in the meantime, I'm going to be very unhappy. And I'm going to show you that I'm unhappy, so that you behave differently and then finally make me happy. And many relationships work like that. The partners show each other they're very unhappy because they want to change in their behavior. And of course, by their unhappiness, they strengthen the same pattern. And so, especially in this beautiful place here, don't pollute the garden of Fintorn, and be a walking story here that is heavy. Your steps become heavy. And where a walking story steps, no grass grows again. And so humanity has that is collectively how humanity is on the planet now. A great heaviness has descended on the planet, and that is the collective human mind, with its accumulated enormous amount of negativity and dreadful delusion. And that's the heaviness that weighs heavily on nature also. And life forms, all life forms, feel that pain. So here, step lightly. Don't carry the burden of personal selfhood around with you, which is your past and your problematic future. But be light, take one step at a time, and be the presence through which you perceive. Be there with every step, and when you perceive the tree, the flower, you're able to perceive against the background of stillness. So you're not creating a barrier of concepts between nature and yourself. A oneness, a field of oneness arises between nature and yourself. And then nature will be extremely helpful. It's teaching you to be one with life, to be still. Just go to any tree and see how still it is. And the moment you notice how still and alive and surrendered to life the tree is, that in you which notices that is the stillness. Otherwise you wouldn't even see that there's stillness there. If you approach it only with thought, you would have some kind of personal thing to do with nature. Oh, that tree, that would be great in my garden. And don't feel guilty if that thought crossed your mind. Or even more, the wanting to pick a flower, don't do it here, but you know, also why I must have that. It's mine now. Even on that level, the personal self can come in, or it comes in, oh, that looks like a tree that my Aunt Mary had 10 years ago in her garden. I wonder if it's still there. And she was a strange person, wasn't she? But to be truly present there as you're a field of aware presence walking, and then it may happen that in addition to the beauty that you see around you, and walk sometimes and give some attention to perhaps a tree or flower for a little while, just be with it. without no wanting, nothing, just being with it. And then you may notice there's a form. You may notice in the background the presence that you are, the light of consciousness in which this tree appears. The presence, the stillness that you are, as the background to whatever you perceive. Birdsong, trees, flowers, different noises in nature. And so there's that which appears, the form, and that which is the space that enables this form to appear, which is the space of yourself, the space of now, the space of consciousness, the one consciousness, the light of consciousness in which forms appear. So that is, and even here, as you sit here, you can sense that in the foreground there's this room, there's the voice, the shapes and colors. And yet, what is it that makes all this possible? To be. The being itself, before it becomes something. That is the one life, the one consciousness that you are underneath the form. So you are in two dimensions, one could say, at the same time. The formless and form. There's the... And this is your practice in nature. Nature is not challenging. It doesn't... You can stay present easily with a tree or flower. Human beings are more challenging. And so they pull you quickly into identification again with form, with thought, reaction. Because most humans still come from thought. They are thought entities. And they want you to contribute to their universe. And they say, give me more thought. Confirm to me that my story is important. And then you can tell me yours, and I'll do the same for you. And in bed tonight, as you lie there, you may find the mind wanting to drag you along with it again and think about, okay, there's only one more day, or whatever it is, one more day, or 3 more days, or 4 more days left here, and then you have to think about the things that are waiting for me when I get home. Let me think about my promise now. And then you suddenly remember, the now. All there ever is, this moment. Where is it? Of course you can't see it. But sometimes it happens that you wake up, your sense perceptions suddenly wake up. And then you feel the aliveness in the body. And you can lie on your bed feeling the aliveness within that permeates the body. Yes, there's life. It's subtle, but it's there. And then the need to think lessens, and you can just be a field of aware presence, and perhaps you can listen. There are certain noises that you hear from nature. And if it's your roommate snoring, that's fine too, that's what is. And be. And if you have to remove yourself from that room, that's fine. Or if you throw something at him or her, you can do that too. Your ability to do things is not diminished when you live in surrender. All it means, I surrender to what is. I could try it, let's see if he wakes up if I throw something at him. Okay. Still snoring. And you see that things that before would have created frustration and upset and anger, and there's so many that happen in a person's life, all those things that before would have created that now are simply part of the isness of this moment. And suddenly you have a space around it. Okay. And that space is the space of presence. And then you get to know yourself as the spaciousness around things, so to speak. Not the thing. You are that which allows the thing to be, and then to disappear, and then something else to come. That's the now. That's the deeper meaning of now, is the space in which everything happens. And so the now and yourself are one. And the power of now, of course, is the power of life, of the very being that you are. And when I say yourself, of course I don't mean the fictitious self of the story that is form-based and thought-based, but the deeper being that you are, being itself. Freedom from the world, ultimately. And then the world becomes a very pleasant place, not frustrating anymore. Things still come and go, gain and loss happen, birth and death continuously happen, and that's how it is. And there's an underlying peace, and that peace is inseparable from who you are. That's our practice this weekend, and that's the way we can live our life, which isn't really our life at all, which is simply life living us, life living through us. We don't have a life, because then there's me and life. Not possible. We are life. The one life, in many forms that are born and die continuously. The one consciousness, the one life. And so life can then live freely through you, and it can flower. And that flowering may take form also as a creation, or it may remain simply as an emanation that comes through this form. And that emanation one could call love, not the egoic love that says, I want you, you stay here, I need you and I want you. Or it says, make me happy, sign here on the dotted line. But the true love, the love that is a recognition of oneness as an emanation. That's the flowering. I suggest you stay for a little while until you feel ready to move. Stay with the stillness that is here, the sacred field, the sacred space, until it's time to move. Thank you.